Something heavy landed on my chest and I could not breathe. I opened my eyes in the dark and felt claws pressing into my ribs. My heart slammed against my chest. I grabbed for the lamp switch, missed twice, and finally hit it. Light flooded the room. What I saw made me freeze completely. There were small creatures on my bed, 7 of them, scaled bodies, curled tails, wings folded tight against their backs. They were not lizards, they were not birds. Their eyes opened one by one, and every single pair of eyes looked straight at me. I did not move. I did not breathe. My mind was racing through every possible explanation and landing on none of them. My name is Callum Ward. I live alone in a small apartment on the edge of Bristol. I work night shifts at a warehouse. I go to sleep before sunrise, and I do not, under any circumstances, order dragons. But there they were, small as house cats, warm-colored in reds and golds, and one so black it seemed to swallow the lamplight. One of them was wearing my sock, my actual sock, pulled over its head like a hood, one leg poking through where a foot should go. It looked ridiculous. It looked impossible, and it was staring right at me with a gold, vertical pupiled eye that held far too much intelligence for something that size. I sat up slowly. My hand brushed the blanket, and every creature tensed at once, muscles coiling, tails flicking. My throat went dry. I had read enough stories to know what a cornered animal does. I braced myself for claws, for teeth, for pain. Instead, the black one opened its mouth and made a sound. Not a growl, not a hiss. A chirp. High and thin, almost comical, like a smoke alarm running out of battery. The tension in my chest did not fully leave, but it loosened enough for me to notice something strange. None of them were backing away from me. None of them looked afraid. If anything, they looked curious, heads tilting, nostrils flaring as they took in my scent. I forced my voice out, quiet and slow. "Okay, nobody move. I am going to figure this out." The sock-wearing one wobbled forward across the blanket, unsteady on 4 short legs, and pressed its head against my hand. It was warm, warmer than it should have been, like there was a small furnace running somewhere under its scales. I flinched, waiting for teeth. None came. Instead, it made a low, rattling sound in its throat, something that, absurdly, sounded like a purr. I looked around my room for any sign of how they got in. My window was shut and locked. My door was closed. There was no nest, no mess, no broken glass. Just 7 baby dragons, sitting on my bed like they had always been there, like I was the one who was out of place. Then I noticed the ceiling. There was a small circle of scorched wood above my bed, no bigger than a dinner plate, the edges curling black. A thin wisp of smoke drifted from it, faint enough that I had missed it in my panic. Whatever had happened, it had happened right above me while I slept. I got up carefully, stepping around small tails and wings, and reached up to touch the mark. It was warm under my fingers. Not hot enough to burn, but warm enough to tell me something had passed through it recently. Something had opened a hole in my ceiling and dropped 7 living creatures onto my bed without waking me until the very last second. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I grabbed it, expecting a message from a neighbor about strange noises, or worse, a video someone had taken through my window. Instead, the screen showed an unknown number and a single line of text. "Do not harm them. Someone is coming." My hands were shaking as I typed back, asking who this was, what was going on, what these things even were. No reply came. I set the phone down and turned back to the bed, and that is when the second wave of tension hit me. If someone was coming for them, were they coming to take them away, or coming to take them back from wherever they escaped? And what happened to whoever, or whatever, had been looking after 7 baby dragons before they ended up on my bed? I did not have long to think about it. A knock came at my front door, sharp and fast, 3 times. My whole body went rigid. It was not even 7 in the morning. Nobody I knew would be here this early, and the voice message had said someone was coming within minutes of a hole being burned into my ceiling. That was too fast to be a coincidence. I told the creatures to stay, which was a foolish thing to say to animals that had no reason to understand English, but the black one tilted its head at me like it actually did. I walked to the door, my heart hammering, and looked through the peephole. A woman stood outside. Tall, sharp-eyed, wearing a coat that looked too formal for 6 in the morning. She held up a small device that looked like a compass, except the needle on it was spinning wildly, pointing back toward my bedroom. I opened the door a crack, keeping the chain on. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to sound calmer than I felt. She introduced herself as Nadia Okafor and said she worked for an organization that tracked what she called crossings. She said something had torn a small hole between two places that should never touch, and that whatever came through it needed to be found quickly, before the hole sealed itself and stranded them here permanently. I asked her what would happen if they got stranded. She looked at me for a long moment and said that where they came from, dragons that age did not survive more than a few days without their mother's warmth. Here, without proper care, they would not survive the week. That hit me harder than I expected. I unlocked the chain and let her in. She walked straight to my bedroom without hesitation, like the device in her hand was pulling her there, and stopped in the doorway when she saw them. 7 small dragons, all awake now, all watching us with those same curious golden eyes. The sock-wearing one chirped and hopped toward her, then, strangely, turned around and hopped back toward me instead, pressing itself against my leg. Nadia's eyebrows rose. "That is not normal," she said. "They should be terrified of both of us." Dragons that young imprint on safety within hours of birth, and right now, every one of them is choosing to stay near you, instead of fleeing toward the exit. I asked her why that mattered. She said it mattered, because where they came from, nothing that walked upright and looked them in the eye had ever been safe. Every creature tall enough to loom over a nest was a threat. Every set of forward-facing eyes belonged to something that hunted, and yet here I was, a stranger twice their size, and they had chosen to nest on my chest instead of hiding. She crouched down slowly and reached toward the black one. Its wings snapped open immediately, and a low, sharp hiss rattled from its throat, a warning clear enough that Nadia pulled her hand back at once. She looked at me, surprised again. "Try it," she said. "Just hold your hand out." I felt foolish doing it, but I knelt down and held my hand flat near the black one's head. The hiss died away almost instantly. It sniffed my fingers, then rested its chin on my palm like it weighed nothing at all. Nadia stood up slowly. Her sharp eyes never left mine. She said the crossing point above my ceiling would seal itself within the hour, and once it did, there was no telling when or if it would ever open again. If the dragons went back through, they would return to their mother, wherever she was, and have a real chance at survival. If they stayed here, in a world with no others of their kind, they would be safe from immediate danger, but would grow up utterly alone. She said the choice was mine, since apparently the door only worked for whoever it had chosen. I asked why it had chosen me at all. Out of every person in the city, she admitted she did not know. "Sometimes a crossing simply picks the safest heart in range," she said, "and nobody fully understands how it decides." I looked down at 7 small dragons crowded around my knees, warm and trusting, and thought about what it would mean to send them back to a mother I would never meet, in a world I would never see, versus keeping them here with me and watching them grow up without anyone else like them. Then the black one nudged my palm again, and I understood something simple underneath all the strange and impossible details of the morning. This was not really my decision to make alone. It was theirs too, in whatever small way a creature that young could choose anything. I told Nadia I wanted to see the crossing point stay open as long as possible, and that whatever happened, I was not going to force them anywhere. If their mother was out there and could be reached before the hole closed, I wanted her to have the chance to come through and decide for herself. Nadia's expression softened slightly, the first real emotion I had seen from her since she walked in. She said that was, in her experience, exactly the right answer, and that it was rare to hear from someone who had just woken up with 7 strange creatures on his bed. She raised her device toward the ceiling, and for the next 20 minutes, the room grew warmer, the scorched circle above my bed glowing faintly gold at the edges. I sat on the floor with 7 dragons pressed against me, feeling their small hearts beating fast, waiting to see what would happen. In the end, no mother came through. The device chimed softly, and Nadia said the mother must already be safe, already caring for another part of the same nest, somewhere on the other side, unaware that 7 of her young had slipped through a tear in the world while she slept. The crossing point sealed itself with a faint shimmer, and the scorch mark on my ceiling stopped glowing, leaving only a dark circle as proof that any of it had happened at all. Nadia told me before she left that someone from her organization would check in from time to time to make sure the dragons were healthy and safe, and to help however they could. She said very few people got a second chance like this, waking up to something impossible and choosing kindness instead of fear. I sat on my bedroom floor long after she left, 7 small dragons finally settling down to sleep around me, one of them still stubbornly wearing my sock like it belonged to her now. My apartment had a hole in the ceiling. My life had changed completely before breakfast, and none of it made any sense. But as the black one climbed into my lap and closed her eyes, trusting me completely without any reason to, I realized I did not need it to make sense. I only needed to be the kind of person these small, impossible lives could trust. And somehow, without trying, that is exactly who I had already become.